So remember, we're looking at that 99th percentile, 99.9%, in grandparents and grandchildren, aunts, uncles, nieces, nephews, half siblings. You're going to be 25% the same genetically within that 10th of a percent. First cousins will be 12.5%, the same within the 10th of a percent. And then the second cousins, really, they're not much different than our regular people who are around us. And so that's why genetically it's okay legally for you to have children with your second cousin because they're equivalent to the genetic makeup of anybody who's not related to you or sitting around you. So we'll use these kinship studies, if we go back to this, where we take the adoption, and so we'll take somebody who's genetically not related to you and then see if they act like their natural parents or if they act like the parents that have adopted them, or vice versa. We'll take somebody who is genetically related to you that you've adopted and to see if they are acting that way because of genetics or because of environment. And then we're going to look at the neuron structure. Okay, so how the brain is specifically made up, how we have these semi-permeable membrane that allows smaller molecules with or without an electrical charge to pass through these, but in others will be stopped. So these electrical signs are going to be neurons that are coming through the dendrites and the axons to make different signals. So you do need this a little bit of fat, like the healthy fat, is going to help these myelin sheath so that you can have that electrical current pass from one to the other. They'll jump from one axon to one dendrite, and they're going to be telling you, sending different information, letting you know what's going on, okay? The axons, at the end of the axons, there's terminal buttons that contain the synaptic vessels, known as the storage site for chemical messengers, also called neurotransmitters. So it's important for this to be functioning properly, and because you want your brain to function properly. Without it, you won't functioning. Without the healthy fats that your brain needs and all of that, your messages aren't going to be sent, and it can be problematic. I was watching a football game last night, and one guy got hit pretty hard, and instantly his hands went into a very strange position, and all the announcers and everybody were just really panicked over it. And some guy comes on and he talks about how that's the body's response to like brain trauma, brain damage, not damage, but like injury, and a like maybe a spinal cord injury. Okay, so what happened was, for that moment, the brain was unable to connect with the rest of the body, and so the hands didn't know what to do, and so they just made some really strange position. Okay, so without these axons and these dendrites and everything communicating properly, the brain can't send messages to the body to tell the body what to do. Within these synapses, you have these different neurotransmitters that are here. These neurotransmitters are released, and they are attached to the receptor. And once the receptor has used what it needs from them, it releases them back up, and they go back up into storage until it's their time to come out. Now, when you use a specific drug that mimics these, like ecstasy, you'll have ecstasy come in to mimic serotonin. Ecstasy will come over here. It'll be an extra neurotransmitter kind of ball thing that is not normally in here. It'll come into this, it'll stay for a minute, and then it'll reuptake it, which then means the brain thinks that it's already received another serotonin, so it releases another one. And that's how we get people to feel so good, feel those natural highs, because these drugs are mimicking what our neurotransmitters are, and it's releasing too many. Then what becomes problematic is if we stop using that drug, then you don't have that same amount permitted, and then you're going to experience maybe depression or something else because you don't have the neurotransmitters that you had prior. There was one guy that he decided to take 30 days of ecstasy just to see, I guess, what it was for. And after the 30 days, he just had his regular normal serotonin levels, but it seemed so low compared to what he had been on that he became so low and like suicidal, depressed. I mean, it was very bad. Not that I'm encouraging drugs anyways, but when you take something that mimics it, when you stop taking it, it can be problematic and can make you very low. So then you have the action potential. This is the neurotransmitters are going to attach receptors on those dendrites, causing the membrane potential to change. Okay, so depolarization is going to be membrane potential becoming less negative, making the neuron more likely to fire. Hyperpolarization is going to be making it less likely to fire, so more negative. So that's the inhibition. The depolarization is the excitation. Okay, if the level of charge reaches the threshold of excitation, an action potential will occur. Ion channels open, causing the sodium plus to rush to the cell, and then inside to momentarily become more positive. Okay, so with that threshold of excitation, you have a level of charge in the membrane that causes the neuron to become more active. Okay, and then the action potential will be the electrical signal. Okay, so action potential is all or none principle. The incoming signal is either sufficient to reach the threshold of the excitation or it is not. And that's just what this is kind of showing you. These charges, what's going on, how it's moving, and how it's changing. So then you have your reuptake, which is what we talked about earlier. Okay, so you have an excess of a neurotransmitter. They either drift away or they are broken. The reuptake involves moving the transmitter from the synapse back to the axon terminal from which it's released. Okay, so remember, it's around here, it's floating around, it reuptakes into here, and then it goes through this process and then will release later. If we have something mimicking it, it will come in and it will keep it moving along and releasing more than necessary. Okay. Earlier we talked neurotransmitters are the chemical messengers of the nervous system. They're going to transport signals between the neurons. You're going to have the biological perspective will tell you that you have multiple different mental health disorders that are coming because of the changes in that biological perspective, the imbalances of the neurotransmitters. For instance, depression and schizophrenia are going to be imbalances of the neurotransmitter system. Okay, and so here's a couple of lists of just different neurotransmitters that are within the body. Acetylcholine is just going to be associated with muscle action, memory, even arousal. Beta endorphins, these are your natural opiates. They're what make you feel really good. If anybody's ever wondered how in the world someone can run a marathon, well, you know, when I start running a half a mile, I feel like I'm going to die, but then my endorphins kick in. And mile 2, 3, 4, 5, I'm feeling pretty good. Runner's high is one of those. About mile 13, people get a runner's high, and even though their nipples are bleeding, their toenails falling off, all these crazy things are happening, they feel so good that they can keep on running because they have these natural opiates that are coming in. Dopamine is going to deal with your mood, sleep, attention, movement, the ability to experience pleasure, pain, learning. All of those would be dopamine. Norepinephrine is going to deal with the heart, intestines, your alertness, your concentration, energy. If you are experiencing a depressive disorder, anxiety or hyperactivity or ADHD, it could be because of your norepinephrine levels. And stress, if you have too much norepinephrine, you'll experience stress and mania. If you're experiencing depression, you may have low levels of norepinephrine. And then serotonin is going to regulate your mood, appetite, metabolism, sleep. Chronic stress can impact your serotonin levels, decreasing your activity and depleting that serotonin resource. It can also be one of the reasons why someone's experiencing major depressive disorder or an anxiety disorder such as OCD. Here's a list of several others, and some of the same repeat, but it is important to realize that if your neurotransmitters are not functioning properly, then it can cause issues. GABA, we're starting to see this right here. It is kind of our natural anti-anxiety stuff, and so it's a tranquilizer which calms us. And we're finding that people who are alcoholics typically don't release enough GABA, so they don't calm themselves down enough, and so they turn to drinking to relax them and to calm them down, which then can lead to other issues. All right, so we're going to look at drugs for a bit. Psychotropic medication are going to be drugs that treat psychiatric symptoms. They're going to use to restore neurotransmitter imbalance to make it more balanced. So for someone who's experiencing depression, they will give them maybe serotonin or dopamine or whatever they're needing to mimic that neurotransmitter and to have them balance it out. Okay, so an agonist is going to mimic the drug, or they mimic the neurotransmitter. Sorry. So think of someone who has maybe Parkinson's disease. They're going to have low levels of dopamine, and so dopamine agonist will mimic dopamine, which then will help the brain to release more dopamine, which helps them to feel better and to decrease the symptoms of Parkinson's, or vice versa. Schizophrenia is associated with too much dopamine, and so you can use an antipsychotic drug known as an antagonist, which is going to block or impede the normal activity of that transmitter. So think about when you're having an allergic reaction and you're struggling with, maybe you're allergic to cats, you walk into a home, it's full of cats, you're dying. What do? You go and you take a Benadryl. The Benadryl comes in and it blocks that feeling that you have of the allergy, and it tells your body everything is fine, and so your body calms down. Okay, so it's helping to block that so that you're able to function. There's different parts of the nervous system. So we have obviously the central nervous system, which we're familiar with. But the other one that we are looking at is the peripheral nervous system. Within the peripheral nervous system, you have two different parts. You have the somatic nervous system and the autonomic nervous system. Somatic, we're not going to look at a lot. It relays sensory and motor information to and from the central nervous system. The autonomic nervous system is going to deal with our internal organs and glands, okay? And that's separated into two. You have your sympathetic and your parasympathetic. Parasympathetic is going to be your day-to-day routine, okay? It's your rest and digest area, okay? So it's going to relax the body after a fight or flight. It's going to calm you down. It's going to rest. It's going to digest your food right after. Think of a big turkey dinner. And do you want to get up and go play football? Not immediately. You want to sit, you want to relax, you want your food to digest. And then once you start digesting and you get moving, you feel better, and then you'll be able to get up and get going. Your sympathetic side involves stress-related activities, and it's going to prepare you for that fight or flight moment. And so if you experience fight or flight, it's going to pause the energy that you're using for the parasympathetic, move it over to that sympathetic side, and help you to overcome whatever stressor it is that is impacting you. So it is very important for you to realize that these two have specific jobs, okay? And so if you look right here, this is on the left is the parasympathetic system, and it kind of shows you what you're doing to stop, relax, digest your food. The sympathetic is showing you how it's going to accelerate that heart rate, remove the pauses of the stuff you're doing in the parasympathetic, and give you the energy to overcome the fight or flight issue that you have right there. All right, so look over the brain and the spinal cord. You guys are fairly familiar with these, just the different jobs that it does. It's important for you to realize that you have two hemispheres. Your left hemisphere is going to control the right side of your body, and the right hemisphere is going to control the left side of your body. We know this from years of studying, from watching stroke victims, all these different things, okay? Lateralization is very important with your brain because that's the only way to get your brain to communicate to each side, okay? And that's important because your body needs to know what each side is doing. So small things like a child crawling helps to lateralize the brain. Even doing the fingers for the itsy bitsy spider. My son, he was very intelligent, but he was only using his left hemisphere. So he would talk a lot, and he was right-handed, so he used left hemisphere only. And he wouldn't cross the midline, so he would pass a toy to the middle of his body, and then he would take it and he would move it with his other to the other side, and he would never cross. So the small games that, like the patty cake where you cross your hands over the middle of your body or your arms over the middle of your body, that helps to lateralize your brain. Crawling with right arm, left leg moving, left arm, right leg. Even putting your hands over your knees, your right hand on your left knee, your left hand on your right knee. That helps to lateralize the brain, which is really good to get both sides working. If you don't have this corpus callosum, then you can't lateralize your brain. They will not speak to each other, the two hemispheres. So it's really important to look at